Welcome back, everyone. Big surprise, Netflix just made the official announcement that they had won the bidding war for Warner Brothers, which includes DC, everything Warner Brothers owns, Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, Harry Potter, hundreds of other big franchises. And what's happening now is they're beginning the process of hashing out the finer details of the deal and what the final merged companies are actually going to look like. You just have to imagine James Gunn waking up and logging into Twitter to find out what happened, like all the rest of us too, because he, George R. R. Martin, the other big stakeholders that are making these TV shows, these movies, weren't really part of the deal themselves, so they found out just like all the rest of us. They've already issued an official statement, and they did a conference call explaining what they're going to do with HBO, like the linear channels, the actual places you go to watch these things, what's going to happen with the HBO Max streaming service, what's going to happen with the future of all the TV shows, all the movies that Warner Brothers was already working on, like I said, James Gunn's DCU, all that stuff, because yes, it is included, it does affect it in a certain way, but not in some of the ways that people are worried about. There are some good things and some bad things about this. But thankfully, Netflix did explain how they're going to treat the actual company, the combined companies, so we know what's happening with all the big TV shows, all the big movies that we're getting ready to watch and where we're going to watch them. That's really the big question, like how much are you going to have to pay to actually watch all the stuff that you were trying to watch before? Where are you going to wind up finding all that stuff? Obviously, this isn't going to change any of the things that I make weekly videos for. All those things are still happening. But what is going to change is the way you pay for streaming services and where you find certain things at certain different times in their life cycle. I know there's a ton of questions about whether or not anyone big is getting fired. There were a lot of questions about what's going to happen to James Gunn's DCU movies and TV shows if somebody else bought Warner Brothers and bought them. What's going to happen with all the Game of Thrones prequels? Don't worry, Netflix and the people who actually work at both of these companies have talked about this already, so we will explain what they just said. This is actually Netflix's official statement early this morning after they won the initial bid in the actual meetings to merge both companies, like the actual talks about who's getting fired, who's not getting fired, what it's going to look like, all just started. It reads, today, Netflix Inc. and Warner Brothers Discovery Inc. announced that they have entered into a definitive agreement under which Netflix will acquire Warner Brothers, meaning the actual buyout itself will start, including its film and television studios, HBO Max, and HBO. There are a couple of notes about how much they're actually paying for the company. It's going to wind up being about $82.7 billion. For instance, when Disney bought Fox, it was closer to about $72 billion, just to give you an idea.
What do we have here?
Really expensive to buy an entire company and their entire film and TV library like this. Then they say the transaction is expected to actually close, like the deal is actually expected to close after the previously announced separation of WBD's Global Networks division, meaning their linear TV channels and all the Discovery part of the company, into a newly public traded company, which is now expected to be completed in Q3 2026, meaning that's when the actual deal to buy the company is going to be done. So the idea is that Netflix just wants the streaming business and the actual studios that are making TV shows and movies. They don't want the linear channels. So Warner Brothers is in the process of spinning all that stuff off into a separate company, which is going to happen next year. Netflix itself does not want to own actual physical linear TV channels. They just want the streaming stuff. Then they go on to mention all their big franchises. This acquisition brings together two pioneering entertainment businesses combining Netflix's innovation, global reach, and best-in-class streaming service. They really do have the best technology behind their actual streaming service, like the way you actually are able to watch stuff by logging onto the app. Where they're weaker is when it comes to actual content, the actual IP, which is one of the reasons why they want Warner Brothers so badly, because they have so much big IP that Netflix doesn't have access to right now. They go on to talk about combining Warner Brothers' century-long legacy of world-class storytelling, beloved franchises, shows, and movies such as The Big Bang Theory, The Sopranos, Game of Thrones, The Wizard of Oz, and the DC Universe, like James Gunn's DCU, will join Netflix's extensive portfolio, including Wednesday, Money Heist, Bridgerton, Adolescence, Extraction, basically naming all their big franchises like Stranger Things, creating an extraordinary entertainment offering for audiences worldwide. Then Ted Sarandos, the CEO of Netflix, said, "Our mission has always been to entertain the world by combining Warner Brothers' incredible library of shows and movies, from timeless classics like Casablanca, Citizen Kane, to favorites like Harry Potter and Friends, the Friends TV series, with our culture-defining titles like Stranger Things, K-pop Demon Hunters, and Squid Game. We'll be able to do that even better. Together, we can give audiences more of what they love and help define the next century of storytelling." There's a little more fluff about them saying how good this is going to be for everybody. Like, we don't need to read this entire statement. Most of it's just them saying this is going to be better for everybody. The reality is it's only going to be better for some people. We'll get into that in a second. There's a few more details about them combining HBO, HBO Max, and Warner Brothers content with Netflix, but then during the conference call, they actually got a little more clear about the details themselves. So we'll actually zoom enhance to that part of the actual talk. What they did is, after they released this statement, they held a longer conference call where people were actually asking them, like, okay, what is this actually going to look like? What does this actually mean? What's going to happen to all the TV shows and movies that HBO Max was getting ready to release? Like all the DC movies, DC TV shows, Game of Thrones prequels, Harry Potter TV show, all that stuff. What's going to happen to the Supergirl movie, Clayface, the Batman 2 movie, the Man of Tomorrow, Superman 2 movie?
Interesting. No.
One of the biggest fears people had if Netflix was going to buy Warner Brothers is if we would stop seeing theatrical releases for all these. Like, would they just release the Superman Man of Tomorrow movie for a week in theaters and then it would hit Netflix? So this is what Netflix said about that. They claim that they're going to continue theatrical releases for all of Warner Brothers movies that were already going to go to movie theaters. But what they're not changing is what they were originally doing with Netflix original movies, like the Knives Out, Wake Up Dead Man movie or the Frankenstein movie. Those were only in theaters for like a very short period before they hit Netflix. Probably the other biggest thing, and this is actually a pretty big thing, is that Netflix is going to keep the HBO Max service and the app around while also periodically adding WB HBO content to Netflix. So like at a certain point, you will see Game of Thrones on Netflix, but all the stuff like all the Game of Thrones prequels that they're making right now, all the DC TV shows, and that brand new Harry Potter TV show that they're getting ready to release in 2027, those will all still start airing on the HBO Max streaming service. So you'll still find all the same stuff in the same places. It's just that eventually you'll start seeing more of that stuff eventually also get added to Netflix, whereas before it would have taken way longer for them to put it on Netflix. Or in some cases, like Game of Thrones, for instance, I don't think they would have ever put that on Netflix had Netflix not bought Warner Brothers. So when we get to Night of the Seven Kingdoms episodes in January, when I'm doing episode videos for that, they'll still air on HBO Max. And the House of the Dragon Season 3 episodes still gonna be on HBO Max. And like I said, the actual buyout deal won't finish closing until the end of next year when they finish spinning out all the linear TV channels to a completely separate company. Then after that, like early 2027, that's when you're going to hear about people getting fired if they're in duplicate roles at both companies. Like, you do the same thing, one of you is getting fired. So a lot of people will definitely get fired in this big move. But a lot of that kind of stuff you won't hear about till like early 2027. So at least for the next couple years, you're not really going to notice any big difference, only just a couple more things than usual being added also to Netflix that were already also on HBO Max. So if you're already paying for HBO Max, nothing's changing. If you're already paying for Netflix, nothing is really changing. You're just getting a little bit extra content. And then over time, what they'll probably try to do is just bundle the apps so that you get both of them around the world for a little bit cheaper. But the more important thing is that they're not getting rid of HBO Max or completely trying to combine HBO Max with Netflix. That was a bit of a surprise. I was assumed they were just going to try and absorb HBO Max, which apparently they're not doing. Most of the questions they were getting from people, and most of Ted Sarandos, the CEO of Netflix's talk, was about what was happening with Warner Brothers movies like Superman 2, Man of Tomorrow, Supergirl, Clayface, the Batman 2, all the really big stuff that they're working on. People are like, wait a minute, is this still going to be in theaters? Are you trying to kill theaters still? What he basically said is they weren't changing anything about the way that Warner Brothers releases movies, so all the movies that they were already making or planning on making, like James Gunn's DCU, will still be released in theaters the way they were originally going to do, normal theatrical windows. Then they'll eventually hit HBO Max, then they'll eventually hit Netflix, probably a little bit faster on Netflix. But also, Netflix isn't changing the way they do things with Netflix original movies or Netflix original TV shows. Like Stranger Things is a good example. They wouldn't suddenly change the way they release Stranger Things, or they wouldn't change the way they release the Netflix original movies like Frankenstein or the Knives Out Wake Up Dead Man movie. Those are still only in theaters for like a week, then they hit Netflix way faster. This is basically Netflix saying that the way things work at both companies isn't going to change.
Yo, James Gunn.
Oh, hi, Zack Snyder.
Just saw your new cut of Superman, and word of advice?
Next really big question, people asking what's going to happen to James Gunn's DCU. Well, Netflix basically said that they're not going to mess with any of his plans, so James Gunn, Peter Safran are staying at the head of DCU. They're not going to change their plan for what DC Chapter 1 is going to be, the movies, the TV shows they were planning on making, all still going to make the same ones. Netflix isn't going to mess with what they're making, when they're making. Like, they're not going to go and tell them, oh, you have to release Batman Brave and the Bold next year or else. They're going to do whatever they want to do, and Netflix is going to let that happen. A lot of people had been asking the last couple of years, what if Netflix bought DC? Would they bring the Snyderverse back? Would Zack Snyder come back? That's also not going to happen. James Gunn and Zack Snyder are already really good friends, and James Gunn said he would already love to do something at DC with Zack Snyder, so it's kind of an open door policy. So if Zack Snyder ever wanted to do some sort of DC project, a movie or a TV show going forward, James Gunn would be happy to do it with him. There's a lot of stuff that I think would work better for Zack Snyder's oeuvre, like the Absolute Universe would be something that he could work in an Elseworld situation. Generally, it should be said that merging of big companies like this usually winds up being bad long-term, like consolidation is not a good thing long-term, but it's less bad than it could have been. Like, it could have been way, way worse. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below. I'm sure there's going to be a billion questions about this over the next couple of years. I'll try to answer everything in the comments. We have a pretty good idea of what it's going to look like right now. You have to remember it's still early days, so it's going to be a couple years before you really start to notice a difference. And what you really notice is there's just more Warner Brothers stuff on Netflix than there was before. That's really going to be the only change. Mostly I'm happy to hear that they're still releasing all the big movies in movie theaters the normal way. That was the thing most people were worried about. And even though James Gunn, George R. Martin, these really big guys weren't part of the actual deal themselves, there was a post a little while ago that James Gunn made recently, and I think he was trying to tell everyone that he had a pretty good sense that everything was going to be fine long term. Generally just seems like he wasn't that worried going into this big deal. Currently, we are also in the middle of CCXP, so it's a bit of a trailer fest. All the big studios are releasing a couple big things. We're supposed to get the first Avengers Doomsday trailer next week. We're supposed to get a new Supergirl trailer next week, The Boys Season 5 trailer. I will do videos for all the big trailers that do get released, so be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss any of that stuff. Everybody click here and here for all of those. I'll add the new videos to my playlist as I post them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.